Companions, not long after we had spotted the 3 sable bulls, which I told you about in my previous story, Manjolo and I had to go to ground because it was getting a bit late and we had to find a spot to camp. Now, the track that we were on was really faint, and in places it actually disappeared. Then we had to stop and look for it, so eventually I decided we have to abandon it and just drive through the bush as well as we could, generally keeping our nose northwards. But we were driving through some beautiful country, truly wonderful savanna bushveld. Most of it was Miombo, but it was interspersed with Mopani veld, some thorn savanna, and it was absolutely wonderful with large open stretches. It seemed to be the place of the giant trees, even big trees like the leadwood and the jackalberry and even the mopani, that were big trees in their own right, seemed even bigger and more majestic here. And we were seeing quite a lot of game sign too. At one point I spotted a waterhole, and we stopped and walked over to investigate, and it was absolutely saturated with game sign: elephant, sable, buffalo, even a one roan track, some lion, hyena. There was clearly lots of game. So we continued northwards and slowly worked our way up, and by late afternoon we got to the Luiana River. Now, the Luiana River is not a very big river to start off with, but it's got a huge floodplain. And this is the floodplain that you see here. Somewhere in this floodplain there's probably a trickle of water still, but it is the end of the dry season of a dry season. So one can't expect to find a lot of water here, probably more like pools and so on. So I decided this seems to be quite a deserted general area and with quite a bit of game. So we should spend some time here. And we turned back and moved some 3 kilometers or so away from the river, and there we made camp. Now, one should be careful of how you choose a camp, because it should be flat, of course, and then if you can have a view, that's usually a bonus. But the big thing is to have nice dense shade through the day, especially over midday, because I like to go for long walks in the morning from about dawn, and I usually get back around 12, 1, maybe later sometimes, and then I feel like a bit of a rest in the relative comfort that is there at the camp with the chair and so on. And if one then ends up in the hard sun and it's hot and unpleasant, then you can't really enjoy taking this kind of rest before the afternoon walk. But we did find a really nice spot under some large jackalberry. We had nice overhead shade and we started preparing for camp for a longer stay than just an overnight. So we cleared away some of the irritating foliage and set out our camp equipment a little bit more organized so that one can have a little bit of comfort and less irritation in the camp. And then it was almost sunset, and I got myself some snacks and a glass of wine. And I sat down and with my diary. And as I relaxed, I realized that actually I had been under quite a lot of pressure for, well, a good 12 days, maybe more. There was the drive through the middle world in a vehicle that's unbeatable in the bush for rough driving, but on a modern world or middle world road, it's quite hard work to drive for such long hours. Then there was the uncertainty of how to get into Angola and when and where that could happen. And then, of course, in between, having to cope with being in jail. And then driving through the bush along really hard roads and trying to keep up the momentum to get into the wilderness proper. Now, of course, not all of it was unpleasant. A lot of it was interesting, even very nice to experience, but there was always the pressure of either time or play or uncertainty or even apprehension. And now that I sat down to relax, I realized this whole period had been quite stressful. And it was such a relief to be able to relax in a place that felt like I had kind of arrived in the wilderness now. And I was going to spend a few days and immerse myself. I'd have to, of course, process all of this. And it would take me time, a day, 3 days, maybe more, maybe weeks, maybe months, to fully process all of these things that happened. But at least for now, I was camped with the wonderful expectation of spending time here and enjoying the wilderness and immersing myself. And I will tell you of my experiences as I go forward in the next story. Good luck, and thank you for listening.